I know that this is a controversial opinion and will probably trigger many Invincible fans. I get it, trust me. Hear me out a bit, and I assure you that by the end of this video, I'll have proved the point I'm trying to make.
Let's see how old you really are. Immortal?
The Immortal, who is Earth's oldest superhero and a 3,000-year-old warrior who served as Abraham Lincoln, fought alongside King Arthur, and led the Guardians of the Globe through countless existential threats, eventually made a choice that some fans call abandonment. He chose to retire. Today, we're examining the objective facts behind this decision, looking at service records, combat statistics, and measurable trauma to understand why his retirement wasn't just understandable, but completely justified. Because by any metric you choose, the Immortal earned his peace 1,000 years ago. Conservative estimates place the Immortal at over 3,000 years old, which means his service to humanity spans from Celtic tribal warfare through medieval knighthood, possibly as Lancelot under King Arthur, through the Spanish Armada, the American Revolution, and ultimately his time as Abraham Lincoln, where he led a divided nation through its bloodiest war, only to be assassinated for his efforts. After surviving World War I and witnessing industrialized warfare on an unprecedented scale, he became a public superhero in the 1930s, and eventually led the original Guardians of the Globe for decades. Which brings us to a simple mathematical reality. Even if he spent just 10% of those 3 millennia in active combat or leadership, that's 300 years of putting his life on the line for humanity, 150 times longer than most military veterans serve before retirement. But here's what makes his burden uniquely unbearable. Being a superhero doesn't exempt him from being human, and the myth of Sisyphus or Atlas might look admirable from a distance, but for someone actually living that existence, the psychological weight is beyond comprehension. And while Spider-Man's famous principle about power and responsibility applies to a single human lifetime, the Immortal has carried that burden across centuries, watching civilizations rise and fall, seeing new standards of bloodshed and destruction set every 100 years, witnessing the Earth nearly end more times than he can count, all while leading humanity and desperately maintaining hope for something better. The Immortal's compounding trauma becomes even clearer when we examine his recent history, starting with the Guardian Massacre, where he watched every single teammate brutally murdered in front of him, while he fought on alone with his stomach punched through, only falling when Omni-Man finally decapitated him. Shortly after the Mauler twins resurrected him, he attacked Omni-Man on live television in a fight where he landed hits and drew blood, even managing to gouge Omni-Man's eyes. But the result was another stomach impalement and complete dismemberment before medical teams could reassemble and revive him once again. Then came the Invincible War, where he faced an evil, alternate universe Invincible and fought until he was completely overpowered and nearly killed for a 3rd time in what appears to be less than 2 years since his first resurrection, which creates a horrifying realization. He doesn't just remember dying once, he remembers dying multiple times, each time knowing he'll wake up to do it all over again, trapped in a cycle of trauma with no conceivable end, because immortality means the suffering never stops, it only accumulates. Following Kate's apparent death during a fight with the Lizard League, observable changes in the Immortal's behavior revealed the cracks forming in his psychological foundation, most notably when Cecil contacted him about a spatial threat, and he flew up to confront what turned out to be Alan the Alien, a coalition of planets' agent and established ally, whom he attacked without hesitation, despite Alan's polite greeting. The significance here isn't just the aggressive behavior itself, but what followed. The Immortal recognized he couldn't control his emotions and told Cecil he was quitting the Guardians, demonstrating the kind of self-awareness that proves this wasn't weakness, but responsibility.
Why do I feel this way, Marcus?
Because you loved her, man.
I loved many others before Kate. All of them died as well. But this is different.
A compromised leader removing himself from command before causing irreparable harm. More importantly, The future timeline shown in Season 3 reveals the consequences of not retiring permanently. Because centuries later, we see him as a tyrannical mad king, implementing harsh laws, mandatory work camps, sparking senseless wars, and wiping out entire cities. Not because he became evil, but because he lived too long, outliving everyone he loved hundreds of times over, until the grief and isolation completely destroyed his sanity. Which means his retirement wasn't him giving up, but rather recognizing a pattern and breaking the cycle before he became that monster. Beyond the psychological toll, there's a practical reality that immortal doesn't mean invulnerable, as evidenced by his documented injuries including stomach punctures, decapitations, complete torso dismemberment, and countless other wounds that required advanced medical technology to reassemble him each time because he doesn't have automatic regeneration, meaning every resurrection depends on others literally putting his body back together, which isn't a sustainable combat strategy, but rather a ticking time bomb of accumulated damage. Furthermore, objective power scaling reveals that against Viltrumite-level threats, he's consistently outmatched. Killed twice by Omni-Man, overpowered by an evil Invincible variant, and demonstrably weaker than even Oliver, which isn't meant as an insult, but simply acknowledges that his true value was leadership and experience rather than raw power, and once younger, more powerful heroes like Invincible himself emerged, while his emotional instability compromised the very judgment that made him valuable. The strategic choice became clear. After 3 millennia of service, countless deaths, documented psychological decline, and the emergence of more powerful defenders, the Immortal made a choice that honored both his humanity and his legacy. He retired to start a family with Kate, who later revealed herself to be alive as she had hidden a backup copy of herself. The myth we celebrate about eternal guardians bearing the weight of the world sounds noble in stories, but the lived reality is that no mind, superhero or otherwise, can endure infinite responsibility without eventually shattering. And the fact that the Immortal recognized this truth and chose healing over duty before becoming the tyrant we saw in the future timeline represents perhaps the most genuinely heroic decision of his impossibly long life. Moreover, his retirement didn't end his legacy, but rather enabled it, as his children, inspired by his example, wanted to become heroes themselves, which means he didn't abandon Earth, but instead created the next generation of defenders while finally claiming the peace he earned 1,000 times over, not through weakness or selfishness, but through the wisdom that comes from seeing things begin and end too many times, from living through every new standard of bloodshed and destruction, and from maintaining hope for humanity across millennia when any rational being would have given up centuries ago. The Immortal story teaches us that heroism isn't measured solely by how long you fight, but also by knowing when to stop. That being a superhero doesn't strip away your humanity or your right to happiness, and that sometimes the bravest thing a warrior can do is choose healing over endless battle, family over eternal war, and life over mere existence. Because after 3 millennia of bleeding for humanity, choosing to finally live for himself wasn't a failure of heroism, but rather its ultimate expression. Believe it or not, I actually thought long and hard about this. Initially, I found the Immortal annoying and selfish too, but looking at the Invincible storyline alone makes it hard to comprehend how far back Immortal's history goes. Let me know what you think, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more Invincible videos.